My name's Dr. Colin Van Werkhoven from FX Physical Therapy. I'm a doctor of physical therapy and a certified strength coach. And here today, we have a very special conversation we wanted you to be a part of. We have Devin Conway here, and he is an adventure athlete, an insane endurance athlete. And we're going to pick his brain a little bit on how he handles nutrition, how he handles his training, and how physical therapy has helped him out along the way to get him to where he is today. Devin, thank you for joining me. Tell the people who you are.
Thanks for having me. I'm Devin Conway. I'm a certified strength and conditioning coach. Like Colin said, adventure athlete, endurance athlete. I do a bunch of races. I have a fun story of just what happened today with a nice little mountain race that we can dive into in just a second here.
Yeah, exactly. So Devin and I were supposed to get rolling about an hour ago, and he calls me that he got delayed somewhere. So Devin, tell us what happened to give the people a little bit of an idea of who you are and what kind of person, what kind of situations you get yourself in.
Sounds good. So, of course, having a good interview with Colin coming up about like adventure racing, mountain running, endurance stuff, I was like, I should go to mountain run today. So I drove out an hour to Blood Mountain in Georgia, and just 6 miles. It's gonna be a little bit of altitude, a little bit of I think 1,500 feet up, 1,500 feet down. So it'll probably take an hour and a half. I'll knock it out. Be back plenty of time for this interview. And first mile in, it's 3 miles straight uphill. First mile, torrential downpour. I get wrecked by this out of nowhere thunderstorm. We're not even calling for it, and just soaked. So 3 whole miles straight uphill, just uphill. Torrential downpour, running basically up a stream at this point as all the water's running down. Slowed me down completely. I get to the top, and I'm like, oh, there's no way I'm going to get back in time. So I tried to text Colin from the top, had no reception. So then I had to fly back downhill. And, of course, now it's a slip and slide. So I'm sliding all over the place, hopping from rock to rock. And I finally get to the parking lot. Shoot Colin a text like, hey, buddy, so I might be a little delayed here. I had a little hiccup in our run. And of course, Colin has to call me to hear all about this.
Well, we are very glad that you got back safely and you could do this interview. But I've known Devin for years, and this is just how he is. So, Devin, you have a very impressive racing and adventure resume. Tell everybody what you've done and why we're talking to you.
Yeah, so let's start out probably 5 or 6 years ago. I was just into normal, like working out, lifting. I played soccer a little bit, was training for like a half marathon. Then I got into training for a marathon. The first big injury that kind of put me on this whole track was I was training for my first marathon. 2 weeks out, just tore my quad completely. I had just finished like my 20-mile training run, was going to taper for 2 weeks, and then have the full marathon, and then just ripped my rectus femoris like maybe 2 weeks out from the start date. So that was my first like big injury that kind of put me on the whole course, because with the whole rehab process, going through physical therapy with the quad, I did a lot of upper body stuff. So I got really big into Ninja Warrior. I was into American Ninja Warrior. They have a whole bunch of subcommittees called like the National Ninja Warrior, things like that. I made it all the way to regionals in National Ninja Warriors in Indianapolis, and had this tough obstacle that got me out there. But after doing a few years of Ninja Warrior, just the whole idea of doing all this training, months of practice to have like a 2-minute run where a random obstacle can throw you off completely kind of spurred me a little bit away from the Ninja Warrior aspect, but I still love the obstacles. So then I got into more obstacle course racing. So then I started doing Tough Mudders, Spartan races, things like that. And Colin actually knows just all about that, because one day I was preparing for it's the world's toughest mudder. It's like their world championship race. It's a 24-hour event that you have to qualify for by doing an 8-hour event. So I called Colin like 2 weeks before the start of the race and got him to be my physical therapist for the race. So we flew up to Chicago, did, was it like 25, 30 miles that night for 8 hours straight, and qualified for Worlds. So 8 months later, then I went to Tough Mudder World Championships in Las Vegas, which was a 24-hour race in the desert of Las Vegas with about 20 to 30 obstacles, from everything from climbing over walls, monkey bars. You had to dive 35 feet off a cliff into a huge lake, swim across it, and climb up a rope on the other side. And you just went around and around that loop for about 24 hours straight. I got 50 miles total during that race. And from then just kept going more and more and more. So from all the races and stuff like that, I figured, how do I get better at this? I got to start running on this kind of terrain because all the races are in the desert, they're on mountains, they're all over the place. So then I started getting into mountain running, and I started going down to the Shenandoah National Park, going down to the Smoky Mountains, and just doing mountain runs all throughout there. And I started doing a race called the Under Armour Mountain Challenge, which was at Mount Killington up in Vermont. And that was a brutal race. I had just gotten back from hiking Mount Kilimanjaro 2 weeks prior to that and had to jump into the race with, obviously, on Kilimanjaro, great altitude training, but I didn't do any running whatsoever. So then I jumped into the Under Armour Challenge, got that race under my belt. And then from there, I've just been doing Spartan races, Tough Mudders, things like that, mountain races. And I got a big project coming up in the fall.
That is absolutely incredible. I would challenge a lot of people to try some of the races that he has done. Like he said, I was there with him during the 8-hour event twice, once in Boston, once in Chicago. Both were absolutely amazing feats of human performance. Devin, let's just dive back into that a little bit. What did you feel was the best strategies for you, and what did I do to help you recover and promote you through the race to help keep you going?
Yeah, I mean, really, physical therapy has always kind of been my secret weapon when it comes to training. Even when I'm not injured or anything like that, I like to do preventative maintenance visits. Well, I'll go see a physical therapist just to get maintenance checkups, to kind of get dry needling, cupping, anything like that. I think at least once a month, everyone should get dry needling or cupping just to help you out in whatever ails or aches or any kind of training problems you might have. But in terms of what Colin did for me is both times he came out for these 8-hour events, which I'm running 5-mile loops for 5, 6, 7 times from midnight to 8 a.m. I would come in, finish a loop. It has like 20 obstacles. I'd come in, see Colin. He'd help me out. He'd stretch out whatever I needed. He'd reset whatever we needed to be able to keep me going for those next couple hours of the race. And Colin was just a huge part of that because, once again, it's pitch dark. It's freezing cold. You're just nonstop, not only running through this harsh terrain, you have obstacles like rope climbs. There's barriers to climb over. There's heavy logs to carry. You're swimming across rivers, crazy stuff like that. And the entire time, I'm just coming in. Colin's like, all right, Devin, what did you do this lap? I'm like, ankles jacked up, knees all messed up, shoulder hurts. Colin takes 5 minutes, puts everything back together, and sends me back out again. And it kind of saved me during that whole race to be able to finish 30 miles total. We got 6 laps in there, and then qualified for the World Championships again.
Awesome. Yeah, we definitely got you there. 50 miles in Vegas once you eventually got there was absolutely incredible. From my point of view, from a physical therapy mind, when I have somebody doing an event like that and they have multiple different body parts and movements that they have to accomplish, it's not just running an ultra endurance event. It's also climbing up ropes. It's going through monkey bars. It's crawling through mud and diving in horrifically cold water. So each lap when he came back, I'm always thinking, what obstacles do I think that he as an athlete might struggle with? Whether his grip strength might give out, whether he might twist his ankle on a rock or something like that. So that's kind of the physical therapy aspect of it. I'm always trying to figure out what body regions are going to degrade first or fail first in a race like that. That's how you have to go about these very long endurance events. What is your weakest link? And if you have somebody there, a medical professional or even a friend that knows that, even if you know, you can tell them, hey, I know my ankle is going to give out at hour 6, hour 7. I'm going to need some help with that. That is how me and Devin have a good relationship. I know what his body can do, and I know what his weakest links are, and that's why I kind of filled those gaps to help him get through that race. Obviously, not every physical therapist is going to have to be up from midnight to 8 a.m. with their patient, but this is what I had to do in this particular circumstance. And we'll get to some of his preventative maintenance strategies a little bit later. But Devin, while we're on the obstacle course racing events, and you said that you had to incorporate a lot more running to be competitive, what does preparing for a mountain running series like the Under Armour Mountain Series in Killington compare to your Tough Mudder races? How do you prepare for OCR versus just running?
Really, it's the matter of the OCR. I mean, OCR includes a lot of running. So if I'm just doing the mountain running series, I'm out there doing a lot of hill training, endurance events, things like that, just really building my endurance. But OCR kind of throws everything at you because not only do you have the running aspect, then you have the grip strength. You're pulling yourself on a rope. You're doing monkey bark like obstacles. You're doing all kinds of weird contraptions up in the air, trying to keep yourself. You're swinging from rings, everything like that. So you need immense grip strength. And then there's other obstacles where you have to be able to crawl under barbed wire. You have to be able to carry a heavy log around and push it over a wall, whatever it might be. So really the training came into just a lot of grip strength training and what I used to call my little own OCR workouts, where I would have just intervals of running around a building, coming in, knocking out like 10 flights in a stair climber, and then going and doing 10 pull-ups or going and doing a rope climb, going and doing like a boulder carry, bunch of burpees, whatever it might be. I was doing a whole bunch of more exercises and things like that included on top of just the running.
Awesome. Yeah, that is. And if you had somebody come up to you asking, they wanted to get in their first obstacle course racing event, what foundational movements do you feel like they should accomplish first before they go and enter a race like that?
Oh, definitely pull-ups. The biggest thing, if you can't knock out a pull-up, you're gonna have a really hard time with all these obstacles. A lot of the races have penalties too. So if you can't do the obstacle, whether it's swinging from rings, whether it's jumping and grabbing on a rope, swinging on a rope, anything like that, then there's a penalty. Whether it's some races, it's like 30 burpees. Some races have like a half-mile penalty loop you got to run. That one Boston course, the penalty for one of the obstacles was you had to swim through a vat of ice. So obviously, the more grip strength and the stronger you are in terms of the obstacles, the less likely you're going to have to do some of those crazy penalties.
Absolutely. Yeah, I completely agree with that. Pull-ups are absolutely vital for obstacle course racing. From the PT mindset, don't jump into pull-ups right away if your body is not prepared to do them. One of the main things that kind of breaks down first is the forearm musculature and the tendons. So tendonitis is a very common thing that I see when I have obstacle course race athletes come into to train with me. Devin had a forearm injury not too long ago that we had to work out. That kind of rehabilitation sometimes can be tricky. Sometimes it could take a good amount of time to heal on its own. And the strengthening process, you kind of have to fight through a little bit of pain to get rid of some of that irritation, as Devin probably knows.
Oh, yeah. Lots of irritation, lots of little pain. But the biggest thing I would think to add to Colin is that the biggest help I found is through preventative maintenance, is when anything starts to flare up even just a little bit, going and seeing a physical therapist, going and seeing Colin. I usually will text Colin, give Colin a call, like, forearm's starting to ache a little bit. I'll go see him, throw some needles in it, whatever we need to do, cup it, whatever the modulation is. He goes in, he helps it out, he resets it there, and it doesn't develop into a problem. Same thing with my running, my legs. I mean, the quads and knees and ankles and calves get beat up all the time, whether it's from actually running or it's rocks or it's crawling, whatever it might be. Anytime I have any little irritation or anything like that, I always immediately take care of it and go do some preventative maintenance before any of those long-term like tendonitis, anything like that ever comes about.
That's perfect. Yep. I agree completely. And Devin, what I want to dive into next is a little shift in topic, because I know people are going to want to start getting out into nature more, especially with the certain times that we have right now. What do you recommend and what do you do for your race and training nutrition and hydration?
Nutrition and hydration are really tricky. It really depends on the length that you're going. For me, nutrition is what I really try to hone down on. So even when I start increasing my mileage more, when I increase the amount of duration that I'm working out, or whether it's obstacle course racing, whether it's running, I start increasing my carb intake. So when I'm not really in training season, if I'm in off season, I'm not doing a lot of high volume stuff, it's under an hour, I'm not doing 1 to 2 to 3 hours a day, then I really lower my carb intake. But as soon as I start bumping up the mileage, I really start to increase my carb intake. So just right now, where I am in my training, I'm just starting to increase in double digits in terms of mileage, whether it's a 12-mile run, 13-mile run, and I'm really starting to inch up that carbohydrates from 50%, 60% in that range. And you really feel the difference. I mean, adding the carbs, those are your life source, it's your fuel source out there. So if you're low carb, I would say definitely take another approach into a different nutrition plan when you're trying to increase the amount of endurance that you're trying to go after. And then when it comes to hydration, the biggest thing with hydration is making sure you're hydrating during your runs. The biggest lesson I've learned is to hydrate every 20 minutes for as long as you're going. So if I'm going on a 2-3 hour run, whether it's 12 miles, 15 miles, whatever it might be, drinking water every 20 minutes, whether it's from a Camelback, a bottle, whatever it might be. You can stash a bottle on the side of the road, whatever it might be. Just hydrating every 20 minutes. And then when it comes to in-race nutrition or in-run nutrition, I always like to use gel packs, little gummies, whatever it might be, every 45 minutes. And if I can keep that routine, it usually keeps you going a little bit longer. You don't have any of those big walls you run into when you start coming down on dehydration or when you start running out of carbs.
Absolutely. Yeah. Those are all great tips and great advice. The gel and hydration packs, especially when I'm doing a big endurance event, that I feel like that is definitely my savior.
That's 100% savior. I mean, it's a huge difference. I mean, if you don't use them, you cannot, everyone will know if you don't use them, you're definitely hitting a wall between 45 minutes to an hour. And once you hit that wall, you're kind of done. That like bonks you out, you're toast at that point. But just having that gel, those little bit of calories, those carbs, sodium, potassium, that little gel pack provides all of that. And that really gets you over past that wall and allows you to keep going for another 30, 45 minutes.
Absolutely. And one thing I wanted to ask you, especially with your longer events, like the 8 hours to 24-hour events that you're doing at a high intensity level, you're not walking these things. You're definitely going after it. Do you use any caffeine supplements?
It depends. So if it's usually the 8 hour ones when, as you know, they're at midnight to 8 a.m., I'll definitely throw some caffeine in because that's way past my usual bedtime. But usually it'll be in the form of the gel packs. Some of those gel packs do have caffeine in them. So I'll usually start throwing those guys in if it's a super long endurance one. I need that little bump in there. But I usually try to avoid caffeine before I start a run, before I start any kind of big endurance space, just through the dehydration effects of it. But definitely during a race, that little caffeine bump can definitely help you up in terms of getting you back up and going.
Absolutely. Yeah. And do you find we talked a little bit about like weak links. What do you feel like, I wouldn't say fails on you quicker, but what do you think tires on you quicker when you are doing a lot of these long distance trail runs and long distance obstacle course racing?
It's really my legs. I mean, my body, I feel like is not built for endurance stuff. I kind of force it to do endurance stuff. I'm more built like a sprinter. I did track and I was always the 100 meter, 200 meter, 400 meter sprints all the time. I'm always good for one big burst. So for me, it's really transitioning my body to be more of an endurance aspect, getting those fibers back up to those type 1 fibers. And it's really my quads go, calves go, hamstrings go. It's always my limiting factor is really my legs because that's the first thing to always give out. Usually quads take quite the beating during this kind of stuff. But really the more training I do, the more running I do, the more mileage, the more strength training, the stronger those legs get, the further they can go. And I really got to put in the work because like I said, my body's just doesn't want to be that endurance athlete I'm trying to make it sometimes.
Would you say that strength training would actually improve your endurance performance?
Oh, 100%. I think everyone, whether you're just running for 5Ks, 10Ks, if you're just kind of a weekend runner, strength training is going to help no matter what. Just some single leg motions, things like that, deadlifts, squats, any kind of strength training with the legs, as well as some upper body too, is really great for kind of strengthening those legs and allowing to be a little more resilient when it comes to those long runs. I think if you implemented a nice little strength program, you'll find out that that kind of wall you hit, whether it's 3 miles, 5 miles, 10 miles, whatever that point is, your legs start crashing out. The more strengthening you do, the longer those legs will go for.
Absolutely. Yeah, that you said it perfectly. And that's one of the main points of this interview that I wanted to get through to a lot of our endurance athletes that are watching this. Some of them may be even patients that are rehabbing injuries and might be wondering why in here at FX Physical Therapy, we teach them how to lift properly rather than run properly. We do take people through a gait training analysis, but a lot of times when people start getting into those really big mileages and really long hours of training, the strength training component will go far longer than just running on a treadmill, analyzing your gait. While that is important to make sure that you're not kind of taking the knee in too much, making sure your foot isn't overpronating, all of those things are important. But if you have good mechanics in the first hour or 2 hours, it's more of a strength issue that is kind of arising rather than a gait issue. Would you agree, Devin?
100%. I think definitely, obviously the gait's going to play into a fact of kind of where you're putting your energy in. But I think really when it comes down to it, the strength training is a huge aspect. And a lot of runners don't really think that. They don't think that I don't need to go lift weights to be better at running. But it really does make a huge difference as soon as you start throwing some strength training in there.
Absolutely, yeah. And a typical kind of example of what you might get when you come into FX Physical Therapy, if you are an endurance runner or an obstacle course racer like Devin, you'll be doing a lot of squats, a lot of deadlifts. Lunges are one of my favorite exercises for runners, especially when you have to crank up a really steep hill and long hill, and it seems like it is never going to end. When you're doing walking lunges across the gym, or a rear foot elevated split squat, when you're doing squat on one leg and the other leg is kind of hanging on a bench or on a roller, those things are going to produce a lot more power, reduce your fatigue over time. And we see that a lot of times with our athletes. Devin, tell me a little bit of what kind of exercises you do for your legs.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you nailed the two of them, squats and deadlifts right there. Lunges are huge. I include lunges in when even just not even on a strength basis, throwing them into a normal workout, into a run, doing running intervals, throwing lunges in between. One of my favorite workouts is run 7 minutes, 70 lunges, 6 minutes, 60 lunges, 50, obviously going all the way down until you're at a minute, and then 10 lunges. And that's huge in terms of you're going to feel your legs 100% during that. But definitely lunges, like you said, split squats are great. Really just any kind of single leg stuff, whether it's a single leg RDL, really helps with the balance at the same time. Definitely the hamstrings too. I feel like a lot of runners that do strength train neglect their posterior chain, they neglect the deadlifts, the hamstrings, which if you've ever gone on a long distance run, best one that comes to mind is I was on the Appalachian Trail, mile 18, both hamstrings just cramped up on me. And ever since that point, I started throwing so much more hamstring training into my runs, because obviously the quads are big and strong, but you don't realize the hamstrings and the glutes really have a huge effect when it comes into those long distance runs.
Devin, I'm really glad that you brought that up, because we talked about nutrition earlier, and a lot of people might say, I have my nutrition dialed in. I take electrolytes every 20 minutes, but I'm still cramping on those very long runs. What that comes down to is actually the strength component within the muscle. Once that starts to fatigue and you start to get a little bit longer into that event, and your hamstrings, in Devin's case, have to work a little bit harder, they're going to cramp up to protect themselves. It's a protective mechanism within the body that prevents injury via the brain. So if you are running and you keep having high demands on your lower body, those muscles are going to start cramping up so that they don't get injured in the future. Unfortunately, that kind of stops the run right there until you can get this worked out. And Devin, you talked a lot about prehab type stuff, preventative stuff, coming in once a month to really get everything tuned up so that you can keep your body at a high level. What would you say your biggest physical therapy success story has been?
Probably before Worlds. So probably Tough Mudder Worlds, I was like 3 weeks out. I was doing so much training, like 18 mile, 20 mile, 24 mile runs, just a heavy, heavy volume of training. And I was getting a little bit of like a patellar tendonitis in my knee, which for me, that was like red alarm, like DEFCON 1, like we're freaking out at this point. Like I can't have any kind of knee problems. I'm like 3 weeks out from this race where I got to run like 50 miles. The biggest success story was right on the knee, had a lot of treatments done, dry needling, everything like that. I was going like 4 times a week for those 3 weeks and took it out completely, ran the full 50 miles, not a single problem, not a single twinge, no pull in the knee whatsoever. And I think that was a miracle at its best. But I think really just preventative maintenance of physical therapy. I mean, if your insurance is paying for it, if you don't mind paying a little copay, I would say go once a month, even when you're not injured. I've done it tons of times in terms of nothing's really bothering me, but I'll still go and see Colin still just to make sure that everything is good. Because just because it's not bothering you doesn't mean it's not an issue. Colin can lay me down and be like, oh, something's going on with your hips, Devin. I'm like, my hips are fine. And he realizes something that if it wasn't corrected then, it could lead to a big issue down the road.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You hit the nail on the head right there. I have no other comments. Well done, sir. Well done. So what major events or challenges do you have coming up? I definitely want to hear about what's in the future for Devin Conway.
Yeah, so obviously with the COVID-19 shutdown, obviously a lot of races aren't going to be happening for a while. So I've started to turn and look to more things that aren't just a normal race, but are more of a big challenge for myself. And one of the things I came across was the Appalachian Trail 4-State Challenge. The 4 states, Maryland, Virginia, West Virginia, and Pennsylvania, all form this little corridor, the Appalachian Trail, where it crosses through all 4 of them in a 42-mile area. Now, the current record for an unassisted run in those areas is about 13 hours. So what I'm doing this fall is I'm trying to beat that record. I'm trying to go for about, hopefully 9 hours, but we might aim for 10 hours. But trying to beat that record, if you start in Pennsylvania and you're running all the way down to Virginia, and the trail kind of winds, it's got probably about 7,000 feet elevation gain during that, and it winds through all 4 states. Obviously, it's tons of rocks. I've ran a bunch of the parts of it, but I've never actually ran it in one full big go. So that's what's on the board for this fall, as well as some other mountain runs here or there.
Well, we definitely expect you to see you in the clinic for some rehab stuff before that. Well, Devin, we wish you the best of luck for that. That sounds like an incredible feat. Beating a record by nearly 3 or 4 hours is no small task and no small goal, to say the least. And we will definitely take care of you over here at FX Physical Therapy.
Looking forward to it.
In order to finish out this interview, we had a couple roundtable questions that I'm just going to rapid fire off at you. These are kind of fun, lighthearted. That's how we like to keep it here over at FX. So question number 1, if you were an animal, what would you be and why?
I would definitely be a wolf. I feel like that's just my spirit animal. I've gone to Harry Potter more, and my Patronus was a wolf, so I think it's kind of just meant to be at this point. And I think just the wolf, it's obviously wolves are all over nature. They're pretty magnificent creatures. They can run forever as well. So I think it's just my spirit animal at this point. As me running through the mountains, I kind of pretend like I'm a little wolf a little bit, but definitely the wolf.
Awesome. I love it. And me and you have a love for Marvel comics and the movies. Who is your favorite Marvel superhero and why?
Oh, you know this one. You know I'm a humongous Thor fan. Always been a big Thor fan. If you guys haven't seen the Marvel movies, definitely go watch them. Obviously, there's a Thor 4 that me and Colin are getting pretty excited for. But I've always been a huge Thor fan because he's just kind of more of a relatable superhero. He's not like a godlike character or anything like that where he has no flaws. He has a ton of flaws, and he kind of works his way through them. He's got a great sense of humor. He's pretty funny along the way. Chris Hemsworth just does an amazing job at being Thor. And obviously me and Colin both know that we've been Thor multiple times on Halloween, stuff like that. So it's always been a good time.
There we go. Shout out Chris Hemsworth. Devin, you have been to some incredible places in the world. You've climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. What's the mountain you climbed in South America?
It was Machu Picchu. So we did a 6-day trek to kind of find a new trail to get people from Cusco to Machu Picchu.
Perfect. So you've been all over the country. You've been outside of the U.S. Where is your favorite place to travel to?
Favorite place would probably be Colorado. I really love Colorado. I like the Rocky Mountains. There's a lot of good mountains to run over there, as well as Denver's a pretty cool city. Boulder's a pretty cool city. Estes is really awesome. I really got to get back there soon.
Absolutely. We'll have to make a trip together. So, Devin, what is your Instagram? What is your Facebook? Where can people follow your crazy adventures and track you on your record-setting pace for the Appalachian Trail?
Yeah, so Instagram is dev_Conway. I actually just put up this funny picture from the incident today with the big thunderstorm. And then Facebook is just Devin Conway. I think it's Devin Conway 7 if you put it in there, which I like to think I'm the 7th one out there, which is pretty cool. That's about it.
Awesome. I love it. And we can't end this podcast without a little of your amazing dog. So everybody, you got to meet Theo.
Yeah. Come on, Theo. Come here, buddy. Come here. No. Theo.
Come here, Theo.
Come on.
Come on, Theo. Sit. Sit.
I got him. He was going for his own little mountain run, but we caught him.
There we go.
Everyone meet Theo, the amazing corgi. He's all over the Instagram as well.
Awesome. We love it, Devin. Thank you so much for coming on here today. We really appreciate it, giving us some insight and picking your brain a little bit about what makes you tick and how you can do some of these incredible things that you do.
I appreciate it, Colin. Thanks so much, buddy.
Awesome. You have a great day.